Sankitamu. This is Elena Ortiz with Red Power Hour calling in from Ogapoge Owinge, otherwise known as Santa Fe. I am one of the hosts of Red Power Hour. I'm flying solo without Melanie today, but I have a special guest, Dr. Christina Castro, who's going to join me today for a little talk about an event that's taking place up near Okeowinge, and also sort of the ongoing drama activism that has been really going on for many, many decades around the celebration of conquistadors and the celebration of specifically Juan de Oñate. But I want to give Christina a chance to introduce herself and to talk a little bit about the event, and then we can get into some of the history and all that. So thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Again, thank you for the warm welcome, Elena. It's nice to be in conversation with you. I always appreciate your intelligence, your experience, your wisdom, your perspective, your matriarchal wisdom. I'm always happy to engage with you. So thanks for having me. So I am Dr. Christina M. Castro. My comrades lovingly call me Dr. X. I am from Taos Pueblo and Jemez Pueblo on my matriarchal side. Specifically, Taos Pueblo is where my matriarchal lineage comes from. And my dad's from Los Angeles. He's Chicano with borderland indigenous roots. That being said, I am co-founder of Three Sisters Collective, established in 2017 after a couple trips to Standing Rock, really feeling activated and wanting to take that energy and bring it home to address some of the issues here we have in our communities. It was also a way for me during my PhD program to stay on the ground and really feeling disconnected through that doctoral process and really wanting to be on the ground and have my feet with the people. And so this organization, Three Sisters, that I co-founded with two other Taos Pueblo women, Autumn Gomez and Autumn Billy, is heart work really for me, and an attempt to create a third space in Ogapoge outside of the extractive nature of the tourism and commodification of indigeneity that you see. Since then, our work has grown. We do arts, activism, community building, education. We've done murals throughout the state and come to the front lines as needed. And I'm just happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
We're glad you're here. And the idea for this podcast, by the way, started with Dr. X inviting me to be part of a panel up in Espanola at the Northern New Mexico Community College, and talking about the fiestas that take place up there. Particularly the name that keeps coming up is Oñate. And without getting too much into the trauma and the just insanity surrounding Oñate's presence in northern New Mexico, I'll give a little background, because I know listeners of Red Power Hour have heard us talk before about what has happened with Oñate, and all the way back to fiestas in Ogapoge, which celebrates the quote unquote reconquest of Santa Fe by the Spanish conquistadors. And Oñate became a figure that was much reviled by Pueblo people due to his trafficking, his sex trafficking of Native women, his treatment of Native people, the incident at Acoma Pueblo, of course, which is historically known throughout New Mexico, where he ordered the right foot cut off of all of the Acoma men. He is associated with the founding of New Mexico. So by a lot of people, he is elevated as a hero because he founded the first capital of New Spain, up actually across the river from Okeowinge. But he was also tried and convicted of treason by his own people for various reasons, rape, one of them, adultery, which, of course, was a crime by the Catholic Church. And yet he keeps appearing. And in 2020, 2021, when all of the statues were coming down nationwide, Columbus was meeting pavement everywhere, and a lot of the colonizer statues and colonizer monuments were being destroyed. The same thing was happening in New Mexico, actually simultaneously. I remember this day, and I'm sure Christina remembers it well. A statue on Okewinge land was taken down prior to an action that we had organized. At the same time, there was an action in Albuquerque that had been organized, and they were taking place simultaneously, and there was a shooting in Albuquerque. There were also skirmishes at the action up on Okewinge, but no guns. Then there was an attempt to bring back that same statue in Espanola, which ended up in another shooting. And we have talked about that quite a bit. We're not going to talk about that today. But this figure, this Oñate, this guy, keeps reappearing in northern New Mexico. And I'd love to talk a little bit about that and why this idea of pageantry and actually cosplay and holding this guy up to some, great standard of a hero keeps happening.
Okay. That's a loaded question. I remember we recorded this podcast. You invited me on the show, and it was before September 28th, 2023. And who would have known? I mean, I could have never predicted. I mean, we were just talking about recent events in Ogapoge since 2020 and the ending of the Entrada reenactments. And we were talking about just everything leading up. And then who would have known just, it wasn't even that long after that happened. So that being said, at these actions, specifically September 28th, 2023, I was privy and observant to folks who were literally coming to our peaceful demonstration to resist the reinstallation of that Oñate monument at the Rio Arriba County building, which they were going to put in an even more prominent location than it had initially been up in Alcalde, Okewinge. And so at that point, some of us decided to encamp there and resist the reinstallation versus letting them install it and then trying to, do a big hullabaloo after the fact. That seemed somewhat counterintuitive to me. So it was there that I first witnessed the Oñate effect, is what maybe we should call it, because there were people there who were literally men, older Hispano men, saying, "I am Oñate." And I was taken aback by that. They were literally channeling and embodying Oñate. They had made crude signs on cardboard and just scribbled, Oñate, or "I am Oñate," I remember. And I was like, wow, this is really an interesting psychological phenomenon. And it's pervasive up here in northern New Mexico. And that's part of the reason I'm organizing this event this weekend. But I am not sure where that psychology is rooted in and why several generations later you have folks still wanting to align themselves with the most vicious parts of that colonial history. And I always say, because people try to peg Three Sisters as being anti-Hispanic, I'm like, no, actually, most of us in the organization are mixed bloods ourselves. And it's not that, it's actually the continued exaltation of that era that was so divisive and harmful and continues to be a source of trauma and generational trauma for our people that gets re-triggered every time we have to go and be fighting these fights against these monuments. And now you're seeing nationally a trend towards reinstalling monuments. So you're seeing that here in New Mexico. So in 2020, when we advocated to the city of Santa Fe to remove the 3 contested monuments, which was the De Vargas Monument in Cathedral Park, the Soldiers Union Monument in the Plaza, and then the Kit Carson Monument, the city of Santa Fe took down the De Vargas monument like right away, which caused a huge hullabaloo with the Hispanic community. And it has since actually been reinstalled in a kind of a liminal, odd location behind the Palace of the Governors and the entrance to the New Mexico Museum. So in order to pacify the constituency, or the city was trying to placate all sides, they decided to reinstall the De Vargas monument earlier this year in tandem with the sculpture of the two Pueblo runners by George Rivera of Pewaukee. So they created this false equivalency of, we're going to reinstall this one to please this constituency, and we're also going to install this new Pueblo-made monument to please these folks. And they did it exactly at the same time. And I'm like, yo, this is not the same thing. And so here we have, 5 years later, since 2020, when the Soldiers Union Monument came down, it's still being protected by the city, and there's still talks of maybe even rebuilding it. And then you also have the half of the Kit Carson Monument, which was toppled in about two years ago now, and nobody was charged with that. So that being said, in regard to the holding on to these antiquated ideologies, I am not sure where these men specifically, where their minds are at. I think that there is a general sense of losing their culture and their place and their history here in New Mexico, but I don't see how that gets conflated with American monuments, for starters. And I also don't understand why they cannot see that the continued veneration of these figures, I don't understand why they can't see it's harmful. Especially, a lot of these folks will also say that they acknowledge their indigenous roots while simultaneously continuing to propagate the Oñate effect. So I'm not sure what's going on in the psychology. I think it's an interesting psychology.
It is an interesting psychology. And I think, I have my own feelings about this. And first of all, like the De Vargas monument being put alongside the statue, the sculpture of Omchuan Katua is just, it's absurd. Two young men from Tesuque Pueblo who were signaling the start of the revolt. They were running from community to community, from village to village, to let the leaders know when the revolt was going to start. They were ultimately captured and tortured by the Spanish. And but they represent liberation. They represent freedom from colonization. And De Vargas, who represents settler colonialism, land theft, violence, all of that, it does not jive. Like you said, it doesn't jive. For me, I always fall back on the toxic masculinity, the toxic heteropatriarchy of the Catholic Church. When I was a young activist, so I grew up in Ogapogue, and I started fighting against the fiestas. And we, by the way, acknowledgement here. So we all have been fighting, standing up for trying to rid Ogapogue of the fiestas in its entirety. But we did get rid of the entrada. It was activists, it was women, it was young people, it was a lot of people, including the Red Nation, who showed up and ended that. We will never get credit for it. And that's okay, because we're not looking for credit. The credit is going to go to Los Caballeros de Vargas and the city of Santa Fe, because they got together and finally decided to do right by the fact that we had showed up 3 years running to try to end that, and had, militarized police with sniper rifles on the roof of the Palace of the Governors. Anyway, that's in the past. But we have also, my kiddo and I went to a Santa Fe school board meeting one day to try to argue against the visitations of the Fiesta Court in Santa Fe public schools. And it was and I've been on the front lines. I've had guns pointed at me. And this was one of the scariest times I have ever had. Is is being in that school board meeting, and there were people there playing the fiesta music on their phones. I mean, it was terrifying. And we were in the minority. There was very few people who were speaking out against it. But this has been going on for so long. And I know Española has the Oñate fiestas, and that was sort of in limbo for a while during COVID, but
it's back.
It's back. So what the absolute hell? I mean, I like you, I wonder what psychology is behind this, but I also, I think I know deep down that this toxic masculinity, it comes from the Catholic Church, and it comes from this all male sense of being superior. It's also white supremacy. And there is this yearning by the Chicano, Latino populations in northern New Mexico. There's this yearning for whiteness. There's this, desire for whiteness and to identify themselves with the Europeans. And we've all been saying for decades, you are not Spanish. Your food is not Spanish. Your music is not Spanish. Your culture is not Spanish. Even your language is not really Spanish. Like if you go to Spain, you really won't understand what they're saying. So why hang on to that? And I think it's because it was that time when Spain was colonizing was a time of great power.
Yes.
Violence, power. We know power is not violence. Power is Mother Earth. Power is the rain. Power is a thunderstorm. But these men see that power of the Catholic Church and the power that the conquistadores had as something that they want to strive for. And they're still doing it. And you can't be a man in northern New Mexico and venerate De Vargas or Oñate and then say you love women.
Yeah, I don't know that those folks would, I know you use the term Chicano, or what was the other term you used? Latino, yeah. So I don't know that I think those are words we would ascribe to them. I don't know if these folks that self-identify or align themselves with Oñate would probably lean towards Spanish, right? Or Hispano. Yeah.
Which is why I didn't use those words.
Yeah. So let's be clear that I just want to that's a distinction there.
Yeah. I mean, it is just to address what you said, it is difficult. I know, I have friends who are Chicano up in the north, and they use the term manito. And I like the term manito. It's hard to know what to say. I always prefer people to identify themselves and say, how would you like to be referred to? And I know that most of those men, and I'm using men, there are women also who venerate Oñate, but most of the men, would refer them to themselves as Spanish. The same way, I'm always amused when I go to a restaurant and I see, it says Spanish food. Like, you've not been to Spain, have you? Or that's been a common misconception, and it's factually incorrect.
It is,
as well as everything else.
Yeah. And it's, I think I got back what I was thinking about. And so you say this older generation is actually now passing on this ideology to the young people, because then you had, September, we had Ryan Martinez, who was all but 24, living on some gated community south of Albuquerque somewhere, and has now inherited that gene of delusion, if we want to call it. And at the September 28th shooting was kind of, what would you say? He was agitated and encouraged by these older men to get to the point of, stirring. He got so stirred by these elders that he ended up brandishing his gun. And that didn't just happen. It was like a progressive, energetic, they were almost like cheerleading him, and maybe already knowing he was volatile. They're like, we're going to use this young man and we're going to just blow and project all this hate or whatever that energy is onto him. and then we're going to, let him be the sacrificial lamb here and take the hit. I mean, we took the hit, but he also took the hit.
Well, let's not forget, in extremely close proximity to cops.
Cops, yeah. I mean,
so I don't know that we need to say any more about that.
Yeah, I don't say any more about that.
But that idea of extreme violence, that idea of power through violence, it has come up over and over again. The Oñate shooting down in Albuquerque, he was let go. The shooter was let go. The cops protected him. I remember after the statue was removed from the visitor center place up in Alcalde, the Oñate statue, it was very soon after that, a few months really, that the sheriff of Rio Arriba County petitioned to have riot gear because of our action that day. And it was women and children who were gathered peacefully, praying, singing, dancing, crying. The statue was gone, so we put red handprints on the base. There was no weapons. I think there were some signs, but also we were there to celebrate the removal of the statue. So I don't even recall that many signs, but because of what happened, they wanted riot gear because they found that the women and children were so
threatening.
Yeah.
I was there. I remember being there. I remember what happened. I mean, that was such a pivotal moment for me. It was really powerful. Do you remember when all us Pueblo women went and had our moment with it, with the set, or that was extremely powerful. And that moment will forever, that experience will forever sit with me, and that propelled where we are today, Yeah.
I mean, I had the same experience when the obelisk on the plaza, the Soldiers Monument, came down, because of the shadow it casts over all Pueblo people in the area. And you don't know about that shadow unless you have that lived experience and unless you understand why those things are so damaging to the indigenous populations. And honestly, this is all Pueblo land. And the elevation or the veneration of the Oñate, of the conquistadors, of all of them, the naming of the streets, the naming of the schools, the naming of the malls after conquistadors, is just a way for us to constantly be reminded that these people came in, not only stole our land, imposed a religion on our people, sold our people into slavery, slaughtered our people, tried to destroy our lifeways. And they're still here because everywhere we look, there are the names. There's De Vargas Street. There's Oñate School. There's all of this. And to further elevate that particular individual by having a fiestas for him smack dab in the middle of what is left of San Ildefonso, Santa Clara, Capo Owingeh, Owingeh, all of that land is just another slap in the face. So it's about land back, land rights, land. It's about tribal sovereignty. And it's also about this toxic masculinity that's imposed by these men who are descendants of those conquistadors, but also by the Catholic Church. That, I will say, I have nothing against Christians. I have nothing against Christ. Christ was a communist. Jesus Christ was a communist. He was an anti-racist. It's the church as a structure that has done so much damage, unapologetically done so much damage, and is actually anathema to the teachings of Christ.
Preach. Thank you for saying that. And I want to add to that, because as we're talking about these toxic patriarchal systems and how we have to talk about how they impact our communities, right? And so when you're talking about this increased policing that was happening up north, have you seen the news recently about how the city of Espanola, along with tribal leaders, have called in for extra police force to help combat the opioid crisis and, you know, the things that are happening in that vicinity? And I'm like, wow, you know, I think there's been some conversations about, you know, by Pueblo women here up north saying, wow, this is now where we are at with toxic patriarchal leadership, where they think that they're going to call in police to address the social issues that we have in our communities. And the women, like the Sayin from Table Women United, have been trying to address these toxic, systems in our villages, your villages, Table villages, for a long time. And yet these men in power think that calling in more police and surveillance is going to be the answer. I mean, if that doesn't encompass where we're at in terms of toxic patriarchy, I don't know what does. I'm kind of scared to see how that's going to unfold and how that's going to look for the most marginalized communities up north. I don't think more policing or outsourcing policing into our communities is the answer by any means.
Absolutely not. I mean, when has calling the cops ever served Native people? And more housing, better social services for people, more things for kids to do, housing, land back,
right,
water rights, sovereignty. Those are all things that we're talking about, not police. If we're looking to just point guns at people, it's never going to solve anything, and it's just going to make it worse. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. But it is again, I'm not talking about all men, and I'm certainly not talking about all men in northern New Mexico, but it is a solution that too often is brought forth by men because they think that's a way to control people. And violence has always been a way to control women. And it's just ridiculous. And, you mentioned our communities, and we have it within our communities too. And I've said this before, I've said this many times, but our communities prior to settler colonialism were not patriarchal. And our communities from Taos all the way to Zuni and on have always been matrilineal, have always been women-centered. And they have also never embraced the binary that was imposed on us by the Catholic Church. So there could be as many genders as you wanted, and that was accepted. Those people were elevated. Can you imagine right now if we elevated two-spirit and non-binary people rather than fucking Oñate? What a difference the world would be. But we did not have that toxic masculinity in our communities prior to settler colonialism. And it's another, gift that the Spanish brought that is completely decimated many communities. Women don't have the same respect and position within our communities because of that imposition of a government structure as well as a religious structure.
Yes, that's also leads me to these conversations I've been having lately about the Pueblo Revolt, because it cycles every year, and you hear Native Pueblo scholars talking about the Pueblo Revolt, how it was such a success. And I'm always like, when do we talk about women's participation in the success of the Pueblo Revolt? And I've been trying to probe and talk to people about what the stories they have from their pueblos, because I'm like, this is another part of the silencing of the female leadership. And we have to remember that as we look at our communities and our villages and our ceremonial doings, especially that are happening at this time of year, we know that nothing can get done without women. So why would things have been any different during that time? And that being said, how do we reflect on that success and reintegrate a woman's perspective so that we can use that as a platform to discuss leadership and reclamation and rematriation of our rightful roles as Pueblo matriarchs. So that's a conversation I want to have more of. I'm very excited about that. And so I think we need to have an event with women where we talk about women's roles in the Pueblo Revolt.
I agree. I have been, I absolutely agree with that. It's been, it's really challenging as a woman to even talk about some of these things because you just don't know. I've talked to women in the last couple of years who are afraid to pursue scholarship because they're afraid that their communities, who are, let's face it, all men, the governments will come down on them. I spoke to a teacher, I'm not going to say where, who was getting her PhD, and she wanted to pursue a certain line of research, and she couldn't do it because she was afraid that her community was going to ban her.
Yeah, I was there. I had to kind of redirect my research from what I would really want to do to something that was going to be acceptable. And I thought, you know what, that's okay, because I don't want to give my best intellectual thought to the academy anyway.
Yeah.
So even better. And a couple of things I wanted to mention too. So as we talk about women's leadership, now we're in an interesting socio-political time where we have Pueblo women running for, leadership and getting into public service. And we have to be in community with our tribal leaders. And so now we also have Deb Haaland running for governor. And it's going to be interesting because we know how these systems work in our villages, but to see how patriarchy is going to be and Pueblo patriarchy, all Pueblo Council of Governors, it's really going to be interesting to see how this election looks for Deb and who actually comes up to endorse her and who doesn't, based on, everything we've been talking about. We've already seen 3 endorsements right now. 2 to 3, I think 2 have endorsed her. Sandia Pueblo did not endorse her. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. So as we, move into the future and we see more Pueblo Dene indigenous women in New Mexico taking political office, we're going to have to talk about these things, and we're going to have to create systems that support these women outside of the All Pueblo Council of Governors who may or may not endorse our female candidates. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how the elections play out and how our Pueblos come to bat for her. And I also wanted to say too that we talked about the Jacob shooting, we talked about the shooting in 2020 in Albuquerque, and then there was recently that guy Solomon Pena got indicted for he was another white Hispano white supremacist that shot at the Democrats in Albuquerque, and he recently got sentenced. So there's a theme here. There's a theme of enacting violence on us. And what are we going to do about that? How are we going to fortify our communities against these kinds of violence? That's what I want to know. I want to know what systems we're creating, because I feel like we're at that turning point now where if the last 5 years hasn't showed us we protect ourselves, I don't know what will. And I'm not sure what that looks like for Pueblo women and indigenous women in our communities. I understand that fear of scholarship and education, because guess what? Then you get vilified like we do.
Yeah. I'm thinking back to a city council meeting that we were at, and Comrade Justine was there. I was there. You were there. We spoke, and it was rowdy. It was, I don't even remember what the topic was, which isn't surprising because
Monument.
Was it the monument? Okay.
Oh, it's the monument. I mean, how many freaking city council meetings can we suss out the monument? Oh my God.
That's right, because Justine said something about, I can't believe we're here to talk about this fucking thing again.
And you said, if you put that thing up, we'll take it down.
That's right. I mean, and those were, that was the time we were all out in force. But the one thing I remember about that and forgive me, I'm not good with names. I think it was one of the Autumns, got up and she said, I'm afraid in my and she lives in Ogapoge. She lives in Santa Fe, and she said, I'm afraid to walk around in my own community as a Native woman. And she's a tiny little, which one was that?
And it was Autumn Billy.
Autumn Billy. As a Native woman, she was saying she was afraid to walk around in her own community. And, you know, I can scream and yell and make a lot of noise, but that statement shook me to the core because
we're mothers.
Yeah. And I grew up in Ogapoge. I used to walk the streets in the middle of the night as a teenager. I mean, you know, I was crazy. I was a wild child. We were not afraid. I was not afraid. Granted, I do not look Native, so I have that passing privilege. As a woman now, I wouldn't be walking the streets, but as an Indigenous woman, you know, in broad daylight, she's afraid to walk around, and that shook me to the core, and it just keeps getting worse. Like, we are never going to be safe. I want to tell you say one more story because it pissed me off. It still pisses me off when I think about it. I was at a meeting, and it didn't have anything to do with politics. It was about Chaco Canyon, and I was talking about, you know, whatever I was talking about. Then a man from Laguna Pueblo got up and said, you know, at Laguna, we have very specific, and it was directed right at me. We have very specific gender roles. Women should do these things and men should do these things. Women should not be in politics. And it was a week or two after the national election. And I was still ruminating on what Trump's election was going to do to Native communities and sovereignty and ICWA and, you know, abortion. I mean, I was still sort of in shock. And when he said that, I just got up and walked out. And I thought, I'm not a fan of the American government. I don't believe in America. I think it's a failed colonial project. Anyone who's listened to Red Power Hour knows that, you know, I'm a communist. But us having to deal with Trump and everything that he's done and how it's impacting Native communities, and to have this guy from the same community as Deb Haaland say women shouldn't be in politics. And I wanted to, you know, what I wanted to do was stand up and scream, what the fuck have you done for your people? But, you know, I was raised as a Pueblo woman, and you don't do that. But what have our communities done to keep our people safe? What have our communities done to keep women safe and children? Police? Yeah, no.
Yeah, I mean, back to my point A, we keep ourselves safe. And what does that look like for us as women moving into the future? I do toe the line. I'm from two very conservative villages that I want to continue to be a part of. But I also feel very passionate and aligned, and I feel a responsibility to the work that I do, and I don't make apologies for it. I feel like if we know our original instructions and we venerate women the way our oral tradition and stories and culture says it does, then this is how we need to be moving.
Yeah.
You know, and we need to be critical of 500 years of toxic patriarchy, and our men should be being critical too. And we need to encourage them to be critical so that they're not undermining us or working against us under the guise of, you know, taking care of us or doing good. So yeah, with all due respect, you know, I absolutely love my people and my culture, but I'm going to keep doing the the work that needs to be done to reclaim, whether it's reproductive justice, environmental justice, everything intersects, and it intersects in our bodies as women and life givers. And I'm never going to apologize for my work. Never.
No, absolutely not. And stay strong, because I think this is just the beginning, and things are going to start. They're going to get worse before they get better for women, and not just Indigenous women, but women around the world, and all women. And I think women need to stay strong, stay in community, support one another, elevate one another, and also keep reminding the world and each other and our communities that, without women, organizations,
Possible.
yeah. And women have always been at the front lines. Organizations like the Red Nation and like the Three Sisters Collective and like Tewa Women United have always been at the forefront. Like, we are out there when the men are sitting behind closed doors and, debating about what to do. We're actually out there making things happen. That's what we have to continue to do. And, I just want to say one more thing, because it was in my thought when I was thinking about the whole Oñate fiestas thing. And thank you for going to Española and actually standing up, because I don't honestly have the guts to do that. I mean, Española is one of those places where, like, you just don't know what's going to happen up there. And yet at the same time, as I'm thinking about these men who like to dress up, who like to cosplay as conquistadors, as soldiers and all that. And thinking back when I went to school on feminist analysis, that, toxic masculinity also often springs from a place where men have subverted their feminine side so much that it comes out in strange ways, like dressing up as conquistadors and, putting on pretty frilly outfits and, marching around as swords. And it always seemed to me to be a little homoerotic, with their holding their erect swords. So I just want to say to dudes who dress up and do that kind of shit, like, look at yourselves in the mirror. What do you see? Because I'm seeing a lot of like sublimated homosexual tendencies and drag, maybe. Are you all dressing up in drag and carry? Anyway, I just wanted to throw that in because
It's kind of like football too.
So much like football.
Yeah. Okay, y'all need an excuse to run and bump up on each other. Maybe
and wear shoulder pads like Joan Crawford and smack each other on the butt.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, there's a lot of undercurrents, like you said. But that being said, I have an event coming up that I helped organize along with some others this weekend. Do you want me to talk a little bit about that? Since September 28th, 2023, when the shooting happened in Española, and thank God, Brother Jacob John survived due to our prayers. It could have been so much worse. Thank God it wasn't. And thank God Jacob came to take that bullet, which is what I realized. Because if it had been anybody else, the optics and everything could have been terrible for some of us here up north. So with gratitude, I just want to speak Jacob's name and also say that 2 years have gone by. It's almost going to be the anniversary of that event that continues to, live in my body and the bodies of others who were there that day. And I really wanted to do something to, like, I don't know if closing that wound is possible, but at least to create an attempt at some healing, some conversation, some dialogues. I know healing is a touchy word, but I know I need that healing and I want that healing, and I want to provide space for others of us who were there also to be able to come together in the Espanol community and talk about some of these things that we've been talking about here today. So that event, thank you for participating on Saturday, is Rooted Movements. It's called the Continuum of Creative Traditions in Northern New Mexico. So we're going to have an art show. We called folks to create art around the themes of tradition, cultural continuity and change, movement, healing from the past, tensions that we have in our communities, and reflect on our living traditions here in the North, and how these traditions that we've been engaging in for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, have brought people together, have been a source of conflict mediation, and where do we want to go in the future? So that being said, Friday night we have an art show at the Northern New Mexico College. It's the September 12th, 5 to 8. And then Saturday we're going to have a series of community dialogues, one of which you will be a part of, and that's the dialogue, the plática around shifting the narrative, reflections on pageantry, performance, and symbols of conquest. We have some scholars, we have some not scholars, some community-based scholars. We're having conversations around things that bring our community together, like matachinas, which is done in all the pueblos and several Hispano communities. We have oral stories and traditions, storytelling through music, poetry, song, and we have a dialogue around feast days and kitchen table futurisms, and feast days as sites of care, community, and reciprocity. So just creating space, and it's going to be kind of a circled space for us to talk about things, and hopefully it's generative, and we will have an opening blessing. We will have food sharing. We're going to have like some pozole, some nice food to share, breaking bread, Pueblo bread, pies, all the things, because these are the things that have brought us together and will continue to bring us together. And, we have several identities like we talked about in Northern New Mexico. This isn't a time to, dissect people's identities or dissect the multitude of monikers and identities that we give themselves, rather a room to talk and to grow and to include and to hear from every demographic. Because guess what? At that event on September 28th, we had all types of folks there. So it wasn't just rowdy indigenous, anarchists. It was Hispanos, it was self-ascribed Genizaros, it was Pueblo women, elders, children. It was folks from all our communities that came to show support. And so seeing the demographic and the different faces when I reflect on that day, I want to bring all of us together. And some of our history is complex and convoluted and trauma informed. But if we don't start talking through these things, who's going to solve the problems of our communities? We're not going to outsource the answer. We have to take an active role in the healing and the future of our lands. And so I'm sure people have things to say about me and my position to have this or to organize this, but I was there that day and I was on the ground, and I've been at all these actions. I've been there. And all of that lives in my body and my heart. And so this is, a way for us to attempt to give back or to create something that is better than what we've experienced.
Thank you for that. And I'm looking forward to being on a panel with two women, one of whom was a professor at UNM when I was there, Dr. Sylvia Rodriguez, and one, Mayra Gomez, who I have never met, and talks about, or she's written a book on nuclear colonialism in New Mexico. So those are also important issues. And, you talk about convoluted and all of that. I've said this before, I've never hidden this part of my family tree, but Alex Naranjo is a cousin of mine. And that's how convoluted my family tree is in the North. And it is what it is. I am from Oke-Awinge. That is my citizenship. That is where I'm from. Everything else, it's not important. That's all identity politics. But as a citizen of Oke-Awinge and as a Native woman, that's where I position myself in the world. And I think right now where we stand as women and where we stand as women in northern New Mexico and where we stand as women who are literally fighting for our lives is really important. So thank you for doing all the work that you do, Dr. X. And I think this is a good place to sign off. If any of our listeners are in northern New Mexico, come up this weekend and throw down with us, have some pozole. And Melanie and I will be back in a couple of weeks. So thank you.
Can I add one more thing? Yes. So we've started like a new little, what do you call it? An affinity group. So we're calling ourselves Art for the People and you can follow us on Instagram. And it was also a way to kind of deflect, create something new. So we can have kind of like an political art collective in northern New Mexico that includes folks that aren't a part of Three Sisters, that are, different demographics. Three Sisters is an Indigenous Pueblo women-led org, and we've gotten a lot of heat for our work. And so this is kind of an offshoot, including others in northern New Mexico who want to, talk and discuss and create art around some of these complexities. But I didn't want my organization to, in any way, or the name to, be off-putting or create any drama around this event. So it's kind of a new offshoot. It's not Three Sisters. It's members of Three Sisters, but it's also other members, community from up north who are wanting to create space for conversation and art and all the things to begin to hopefully, healing. I keep coming back to that. I know that's a contested word right now in this day and time, but healing's a part of it.
Yeah. And I think especially, even 2 years ago, we weren't in the same position we are now. And as material conditions on the ground change, we all have to change with them. And we know that. But thank you for that. Thank you for joining. So please remember, folks, if you enjoy Red Power Hour and the other Red Nation podcasts, to contribute to our Patreon. We use those funds to support causes across Turtle Island. It supports Red Nation's continued work. It also supports Red Media's work. So if you have a couple of extra bucks a month, consider going to Patreon and supporting our podcasts. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.